Hi, I'm Max Vonne. Welcome to How to Write a Fantasy Book Series. This is a series of instructional videos on how to write fantasy books. We're going to go deep and cover a lot of topics, so let's get to it. Is writing for you? That's a real important one that we start with because maybe it isn't. And it's better to find that out early rather than later because it's very time intensive and you don't want to waste that time. We also talk about barriers to entry. Good news for writers is that the barrier to entry is low. It's more of a time commitment. Um, Branding, that's something that's a passion of mine. You want to build a brand that's worth sharing, that's has some vision behind it, and we're going to talk about what goes into that. Um, Creating your own blue ocean, and that's a business theory, and there's a book called Blue Ocean, and we're going to get into that and what that means for us. But it's very exciting and a great dimension to this course. We're going to share tools and resources because obviously you're going to need those on your journey as a writer. And good news there is they're very accessible, often very low cost, if not free. Instruction books obviously cost money, but they're generally very inexpensive. So your barrier to entry on money on being a writer is very low. Um, we're going to get into what mode are you going to write in, what point of view is the book going to be written from, first person, third person limited. Personally, I use third person limited, and we're going to focus on that. That's how I write my books, and it's what I know best. So we'll be focusing there. Casting characters, we're going to talk about how to build that and what that means, and how to create great characters and some insights there. 3-act structure, we're going to go over that. It's very important, beginning, middle, and end of your book. And really mastering that, which is not complicated. Sounds complicated maybe, but it isn't. Will really help you set the pacing of the story, the key moments, and the resolution. So that's something that we focus on, and that's going to be very important. Cinematic elements, this is something I've kind of learned to do. I make a list of things that I want to include in the book, and we'll show you how that technique works. Swatches, which is, this is a thing I do where I write, a partial scene for my character just to see if I like the character. Does the character start talking to me as I'm writing? Do I feel like I'm going to get a lot out of writing that character? And so that's a technique. I'm going to be sharing that. World building obviously is very important in fantasy because people want to be immersed in that world that you're building around them. And so there's some techniques for that. We're going to be going over that. Main character's pivotal moment. That's identifying that moment of growth in the story for a character. That's really important. There's a thing called spooks, and this is was introduced by Deborah Chester, who has a book, The Fantasy Fiction Formula. It's a very good book. I highly recommend it, and we're going to be talking about that in detail. Developing your unique voice, and I think this is really important. Once you learn different aspects of technique, you can combine them in a way that suits you and really brings your unique vision to it. And so we'll be talking about that a little bit. 4 legs of a writer. This is just concept I've had about what it takes to be a writer and the activities that you should be involved in as you're writing. And I found that they were very helpful for me, so we're going to get into that. Timelines and expectations. There's something you need to kind of plot out, and not only as a way to keep yourself on track, but also to be realistic about your productivity and what that's going to lead to. Marketing and self-publishing. I'm a self-published author. I like that way. I really don't like the idea of publishers and gatekeepers deciding what the public gets to read, and I don't like the idea that an author's profit gets diluted by someone who's got to be in the middle. I was very honored in my life to meet Stan Lee, and one of the things that always struck me was how he was kind of shortchanged in the process of all the things that he created. So that's really important to me. It's a passion of mine. I hope to crack it wide open. I want to see self-published authors do really well. There's obviously many cases of that already out there, and you can Google that and look for that. But just as someone who hasn't crossed that threshold, I'm going to build that from scratch. So I'm looking forward to doing that, and I hope that I have some success with that I'm able to share, and it's a replicatable process because I really think it's important. Faer is my series, and that's going to be my case study in this series. It's what I know best. It's how I put together all this material. It's how I develop my own processes that I think are worth sharing. So let's talk for a minute. Why do this? And I have a background in computer programming and the open source community in computer programming. What that is basically programmers help programmers. They write code. They'll help you troubleshoot. There's a giant community, and basically anything you need is so well documented and so accessible that it really helps programmers be better programmers. So along that spirit, I want to help writers. I want writers to help writers, and I want to be one of those writers that help other writers. I want to see if this works, like this organic, homegrown way of marketing, because I think in the long run it'll be really good for writers. And finally, to give something back, like in the open source community, I wrote computer instruction books previously under a different pen name. So I know what that's like, and it's important. It makes a big difference in someone's life if you can teach them something they didn't know before, make something a little bit more accessible. And that's one of the great things about YouTube and this time that we live in, is things are so much more accessible. So just talk a little bit about my works in progress. Obviously, I mentioned Faer. I built a website, starfair.com, to support Faer, and it has some interesting things on there. You want to check that out when you get a chance. I've also built this other site called writerswiki.com, and that keeps track of all the resources that I use. There's another writer helping me with that, Bethany Tucker, and she contributes material to that as well. So whenever we find like a useful book, a useful article, a site or a service or anything that could be useful for writing, we log it in there so you have access to it. And these videos are going to appear on there as well. So that's something I put together, and it's a way of keeping track of all the stuff that we throw back and forth and sharing these resources. One of my marketing ideas is to give away the first book free, and that's Cartha's Kiss, and as of January 15th, 2020, that's available free on Amazon. I hope you check that out, download it, leave a positive review if you can. It'd be a big help. And really, if you go deep into this series, you might want to go into the series and actually read it just to kind of get a sense for how I'm applying what I'm talking about. I mean, now obviously I'll draw the parallels, but you can kind of see how it plays out. Not that you're going to follow exactly what I do. In fact, I'm kind of sort of hoping you won't. But you'll develop your own techniques, and you'll find things that are important to you. And I think that's really what's important here, is how to learn the process, how to learn how to write a fantasy series. So I'm going to leave it at that, and we'll wrap it up and see you back in the next video. And thanks for watching. Hope you visit starfair.com. I hope you like this video, and please subscribe below, and we'll see you soon.